Hits and Crits. This video is brought to you by Asmodee.
What's up, Hits and Crits crew? Welcome to this very special live stream, live Q&A with the one and only Carlo, creator of Stats. And yeah, I think we can just jump right in. Like, before we start out, there's a little just little housekeeping. Please feel free to drop all your questions down at the comments. We have 3 moderators checking in for your questions, and they will make sure to make us aware of it. So we also created this form beforehand to collect some questions. So that's we will cover them too. And yeah, I think we can just jump right in. So Carlo, great to have you on the stream, because, you know, with the announcement you put out, there's a lot of questions out there, a lot of fuzz about it, and a lot of uncertainty about what will happen post Stats. What are your plans, your personal stuff? So great to have you on here exclusively on Hits and Crits, which is great. So yeah, so let's just start with a little introduction about yourself, and maybe about a little history lesson about how this whole how Stats came alive. What was your idea behind it? How was the time? Because when we talked in our pretty like deep talk we had before, we talked about that it was during COVID, so that's quite interesting, I feel. So yeah, so Carlo, great to have you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's been quite a while since I was on a live chat. It's been, but it used to be an incredibly regular thing. So hopefully everyone still remembers my face. Thank you for having me on. You know, thanks for letting me use Hits and Crits as you know, a platform to get out there and discuss with a bit more context. Because I understand that, you know, I've been not really responding to a lot of the conversations that have been going on. They've been going on in all sorts of different places, different Discords, different channels, all those things. Lots of people discussing it. I have, you know, wherever possible, tried to keep in, you know, kind of abreast of those conversations, what's going on, trying to understand what people's concerns, fears, discussion points are. But I didn't want to get involved, and I didn't want to, you know, kind of move the conversation into different areas. So I think it's really great for us to be able to talk about it now. Hopefully anyone and everyone who really wants to talk about it and can ask. I think, you know, I'm well versed in live chat, as you're well aware. So yeah. I think that it's a good medium to get this kind of forum going. So yeah, thanks for putting this on. That's brilliant. Yeah, I guess who am I, and how did Stats come about to be? What my history with song is. I've said it in different places a few different times, and interestingly, you know, in preparation for coming on, I was trying to remember it myself. It's such a long roller coaster journey that at times I kind of forgot. So some of this might actually be kind of wrong in its date details. So much of it is kind of fuzzy. But yeah, it goes back. Me and Song go back quite a long way. I backed the original Kickstarter. So I actually don't really remember when it delivered. I don't know if other people do. Possibly early 2019. It might have even delivered in 2018.
Later than expected.
Yes. Well, you know, earlier and much more on time than other Kickstarters, which I was waiting for at the time. You know, at the time I was big into Kickstarter.
Yeah, me too.
I had different games being delivered every month. You know, mostly on the board game end. I'm much more historically a board gamer than I am a tabletop gamer. Though, you know, of course, I played Games Workshop games since I was about 10 or something like that. You know, that's when I first started playing Warhammer.
Yep.
The Kickstarter arrived, and we didn't play it at first because there was a backlog of loads of other games that we hadn't played. But then coming towards the end of 2019, it had become pretty much the sole game that I was playing. And I was, myself and a few people at the Games Club had become really invested in it, started traveling to tournaments, which I'd never really been big on before for tabletop games, because I think that you know, like I think that board games are a much tighter system, much better for kind of like tournament play. And what I really liked about Song was that it had a lot of board game aspects to it, alongside the the tabletop aspects of modeling and stuff like that, which I've of course always been into. So what's interesting is around 2019, I was also getting into, I was experimenting with some new mathematics, which sounds a bit weird, but as a lot of people know, I am actually like a statistician, as it were. I do a lot of data analytics and stuff like that in my professional life. So I was interested in some new mathematics, and I was creating some new formulas, which eventually became algorithms. And the idea and concept around them was that not only can we look to measure what a player's skill is, like in an ELO formula, but we can also look to measure how imbalanced a game is. And if we solve these two things at the same time, we get a better measure of what a player's skill is, and we get a much stronger idea for like what the imbalance in the game is. Because of course, if the players are wildly different in their skill ability, it doesn't really mean much for what the result of the game is in terms of balance. But then on the flip side, if the matchup is wildly imbalanced, then it doesn't really say a lot about the player's skill if one side wins and the other side loses. So it was a whole new idea, which I don't think exists anywhere else. And some relatively complicated maths that you can solve them both at the same time, and it really empowers the other one and makes them really powerful. So I was really interested in this idea that you can sort of like solve the game state, but like not because you're trying to get a complete answer, but because you're trying to understand how unbalanced something is, and therefore you can like correct it. You can make adjustments and see how that goes. So that was like late 2019, and it just sort of so happened that the game that I was really obsessed with at that time was A Song of Ice and Fire. So I decided that what I would do is I would kind of build these algorithms, and I would try and build a site where people would submit their results, and we could basically kind of test this theory out, test these new mathematics that I'd kind of created, and that became the groundwork for A Song of Ice and Fire. Stats, The Song of Ice and Fire Stats, not just Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
Now, I keep coming back to 2019 because, as you alluded to, what really changed everything is that, of course, COVID-19 came along, and in early 2020, what was very much a casual project, the UK went into, for those that don't know internationally, and those who even forget, you know, it was 5 years ago. I think it's crazy to think back now. The UK went into quite strong, like legal lockdowns. You were not allowed to leave your house for anything other than to go and get food. So for initially, we were told, like, you know, for the next week and then maybe for the next month, we weren't allowed to leave our homes. And I suddenly thought, okay, this is a defined amount of time, and I can't do anything else. I can't go anywhere else. So what I'll do is I'll dedicate myself to this project. And then at the end of lockdown, when everybody else says, oh, I watched 17 seasons of South Park, I can say, I built this website, you know, like, you know, and I have this thing that I'll say, like, hey, like that's what I did. It was great, you know. And so I really hard dedicated myself to this idea. I was working on it 10+ hours a day, 7 days a week, because what else are you going to do when you're not allowed to leave the house? No. But what kind of got a bit crazy is that 1 week, 1 month lockdown became 2 months, became 3 months in the UK. And effectively in and around, I continued in that pattern for the next 9 months. So I actually continued to work on Song for 50, 70 hours a week or something throughout the entirety of 2020. It was, of course, a very weird place for me to be. It was a very special time. And you know, what spawned out of it is A Song of Ice and Fire Stats in the majority of what people know it to be today. Of course, it continues to change over that time.
Yep.
Around the same kind of time, of course, I also started running TTS tournaments, ran the first large TTS events through the site, and just generally know TTS, of course, I think was a really, really big part of the fact that Song came out of COVID actually a much, much bigger and stronger game than it went in my opinion. I think that it was still getting its, you know, it was still just establishing itself, at least in the UK. As lockdowns began and as COVID came along, but I actually think that it came out as a very strong community on the other side of that, whereas a lot of other games which don't translate to TTS as well, or just didn't have as really strong communities and mods built for them in TTS, they took a much bigger hit, and I think they took a lot longer to really like rebuild after the COVID times. In amongst there, also started doing some YouTube stuff. People are well aware. That began with some videos where I was trying to communicate the site to people, trying to get people to understand that this isn't just a normal ranking system where, you know, like it promotes you to use the best thing in the game and that it's going to like create net list building and stuff like that. But I feel like I really did struggle, and probably, you know, the thing that I was least good at back then was communicating. And even to this day, I struggle to fully communicate what the site tries to achieve and why that's different as an approach to basically every other site out there that implements ranking algorithms. Because, you know, the mathematics is incredibly complex to kind of like go into the nitty gritty of why it works and why it's different. And so try to kind of talk about it in a much more loose manner. But so yeah, a kind of like three aspects to Song throughout 2020 for me were, you know, I was running tournaments, doing some YouTube stuff, but really what my main focus was the site, and everything I did was trying to bring more eyes and attention to the site and get people to use it and convince the community of the power that it could have. Because it was a slow start, and there was some people who, you know, were not really on board with a ranking system for the game, and they don't like the idea of discussing balance in those kind of like terms. That was 2020. Throughout 2021, myself and Chris Eustace started putting on the UK GT, the London Grand Tournament, at the London Grand Tournament, run by UK Tournament Circuit. By 2022, that had become incredibly successful. It was the biggest tournament in the world at that time. We managed to get 110. I still think it's like the third biggest tournament that's ever run for the game. Only War Factory have run bigger events, as far as I'm aware. Yep. So really, really pleased about that. And just continued to, like, as we came out of lockdown and as we came back to physical gaming, tried to kind of like lead the UK community into like growing into a really established physical scene as well. And I think that worked. And then over time, I tried to pass off, or at least I feel like I tried to pass off things that I had built, because I never intended to run them forever. I always intended to show what could be done and then try to have other people lead them. I've always built things that I, as a player, wanted to exist, but it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to run them myself. So I created the UK Nationals that I wanted to exist, and then I hoped somebody else would run it. I build the site in a way that I, as a player, always wanted it to be. It focuses on things that really interest me. There are some things that have happened to it over time that are much more that the community wanted, or like required to bring the community on board. But yeah, the game grew throughout that time, and I was really pleased with it. But my involvement started to dwindle around 2023, really. And since then, I haven't been anywhere near as involved. Stopped doing the YouTube stuff, and yeah, that we sort of come to now with a big gap as to what happened in between. But you know, it's been an up and down road.
Yeah. And I will just take the opportunity to like thank you for all, like the whole song community, for creating song, like creating stats with such, with such effort you just explained. And yeah, to make it all clear, right? You did all of this by yourself. There was no one else involved in building stats or like adding new features and stuff. I mean, you mentioned YouTube, and you had your thing going on YouTube with Mickey, for example. But the whole stats site was just from you, and I feel this is something really incredible. You can, look back at and just be proud of yourself. For me, as someone that started a little later, I jumped on the song a little later. I really have to say, during COVID and stuff, without stats and without the TTS mod at that time, but still today, I really do not know where Song of Ice and Fire would be today if there wasn't for these two tools. So again, I said that on the other video we did with Leon and Bartender, right? So I really have to be thankful for people, having bias for action, taking that and just bringing it for basically. I mean, like I checked the other day, Stats has what 34 something patrons right now. So this is and I do not want to talk about money or anything, but it's obviously nothing where you like earn a lot of money with. It's really something that you are passionate about, which probably costs more money than it or maybe is even. I don't know. I really don't know, and I don't want to know. I'm just saying this is not a fortune you're making there, and this is not something for money. This is really something to give back to the community, which I really appreciate. So thank you again. The question I have, or my one of my main questions when I saw the announcement was, why did you announce it now exactly? Why exactly now? And to remind all of our viewers, the site will shut down right after the invitational. So what was it again? End of March, right? Was it?
End of March.
So end of March. So right after the invitational, so you're making use of your own tool to basically organize the invitational. So why now?
Yeah. So firstly, thank you for everything you just said there. I guess there was a few things I wanted to pick up on just before I answered that question. Yes, to reiterate, as I sort of like mentioned in the intro, to me, like there are like three aspects to myself in the community, as it were. There is building the site, and for at least for a long time, I think people are a bit more aware now, particularly from the announcement and stuff like that. The site has always just been me. Every line of code written in the site was written by myself. There are the tournaments that I run, which I have always from day one run in collaboration with Chris Eustace. I think that his role in promoting them and making them as big as they have been is wildly undervalued. I always thank him for his contribution, but partly because of the site and partly because of YouTube. Like, I've always been the face of those events, but actually they wouldn't exist without Chris Eustace. So, big thank you to him for that work. But I consider them relatively separate things. Like, I understand why people, like conflate the two or whatever, but there is the site, and that's me. And then there are the tournaments that I run, and that's me and Chris. And then there's the YouTube, which I understand is the most complicated around how it looks like a blurred line. But to me, YouTube, it began as this way for me to try to explain myself and explain the site and how it worked. And Mickey came on board to do video editing. But then after a while, it was much, much easier. I'm sure you are so well aware. Yeah. I don't want to,
I know.
I'm talking to somebody who well knows that long form content, which is highly edited, post edited, is much heavier workload than just doing live content. And so that's how Tawny Ground, the live site, the live discussion with Mickey came around, because it's just much easier content. But to me, at that point, the tourney ground was always actually Mickey's show. People, if they're astute, will notice that there has never been a tourney ground which had me on but did not have Mickey on. But there have been many tourney grounds that have Mickey on but don't have me on. Like it is Mickey's show, and the channel that it runs on does run the name A Song of Ice and Fire Stats, or it used to. It actually now runs the name Tourney Ground. But I consider them to be three separate things. Yep. But I understand why the community kind of like don't really understand.
It blurs into each other. Yeah.
I mean, there was also a big blur a long time ago. People who are on the Stats Discord actually will be aware that it's still called the NRG, A Song of Ice and Fire Stats Discord. NRG was another podcast that I was actually just part of, called Northern Realms Gaming, who were a group who live within like 30 minutes or so of where we play, who moved on a long time ago. But I mean, they also helped me run the first tournament. There were huge blurred lines back then. People used to think that I ran that channel, but I was always trying to be very clear that I didn't run that channel. I just happened to also be known through other means. So yeah, I think that there's always been really blurred lines around content creation. Anyway, back to the site. Of course, it was always like a really passion project. Like there is no other way to describe it other than passion project. And at times I was a little too passionate about it. Like, it was a really weird time during COVID. I did become incredibly obsessive over it. I had this idea that coming out of COVID, like I would have achieved something great.
Yep.
And as I got pushed back on certain things, I became a bit too passionate at times about like that people didn't see what the potential that I saw in the site. What people don't know, unless they are site Patreons, is that I actually stopped maintaining and developing the site about 2 years ago. I actually thought it was less than that. I thought it was about a year ago, but actually I looked at the site's kind of like code base history. But I stopped maintaining it in any real sense of developing any new features or even fixing features as and when they broke. Now, the reason why that is that I began building a new site to replace the current site. What I consider A Song of Ice and Fire Stats the old site. I have an old site and I have a new site.
The prototype.
So I started a new code base from fresh because I don't want to get into like loads of code technicalities and stuff like that, but there are numerous issues and problems with the current code base. To like even just touch on a few, it has a really weird system where it uses two different databases which don't really talk to each other. That's why sometimes you get stuck with, a gate like ghost games kind of exist on your profile. There are huge inefficiencies in the way that it calls APIs and the way the APIs are built. But it's a classic case of like tons and tons of the features were built in a hurry. Tons of them were built really fast in response to things that the community wanted, but I hadn't prepared for. So it is the most classic case of like scope creep. The site is very, very different now than how I first imagined it would be, and how it was when I first deployed it. When I first created it, it was very simple. It was just a method by which you submitted results. All of that means that it is very, very hard to maintain and requires a lot of work to maintain. Plus, in terms of, as you touch on the money, the fees for the site are a lot higher than they should be in terms of like data fees and stuff like that. They could all be made far more efficient. So about 2 years ago, I decided that I would start fresh and I would create a new code base, because the current one is riddled with like technical debt. It's riddled with problems. And I was developing that in parallel with trying to put in minimal maintenance to the current site. The issue is that we're not in the super special time period of me being obsessed with the game, nowhere to go, constantly locked indoors. And so development for that has stalled many, many times across that 2 years. And some time ago, at first I told myself, I'll launch site 2.0. That'll be brilliant. It'll be great for the community. Then at another point down the line, probably about a year ago, I told myself, okay, well, I'm not really that connected with the game anymore. I'll launch site 2.0, and then that will be me, leaving the game. I'll say, here, guys, look, I built you a much better site, but I'm not really part of this community anymore. I don't play it very regularly. Here you are. Here's my leaving present to you.
Yeah, your legacy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But then, unfortunately, that also came with a look. If I haven't finished this site by the time the invitational comes around, then I just need to accept that I'm never going to finish it.
Okay.
And so we're here, a few months away from the invitational. The site is nowhere near finished. And it saddens me to admit that it's a long way away from being finished. It saddens me that nobody will get to see it. The Patreons have seen snippets of it. What is there for proud of? It blows the current site out the water. So the reason why we're closing it now, the reason why it's the invitational, is because I set this in my mind as a point where I would either be way back into the game or I would be saying goodbye to the game, because I haven't been connected with the community for the past year. I haven't played a single game of Song in over a year. And that's just the reality of where we're at. Unfortunately, the passion has, burnt too bright. In some cases, effectively, it burnt too bright and didn't burn long enough. And so, that's the why. It has more context around the fact that the current site is a nightmare to maintain. And anybody who wants to have something that exists like the site would be, in my opinion, because I did myself, you would be better off building a new code base than you are trying to maintain the current one, because it's not worth keeping. It's not worth saving. It has too many issues. It's had too many things bolted onto it. It's changed what it's tried to achieve too many times in the past 5 years in response to what the community wanted from it.
Yeah, we'll talk about this, or we will definitely talk about this later, about the current status of the site, because we, in our pre-talk or pre-discussion about today, we also tackled stuff like that. Like, people were like approaching you about saying, can we take over stats? Is there any way to save stats? We will definitely cover this later. One main question also remains in my mind is, before we go to more in-depth talk about the status of the site and the current status of us, or about post stats, and that's actually my question I have. It definitely leaves a hole, because such site does not exist. I mean, there are tools out there for list building. We are aware. There is a tool which can take, or which can replace a little bit of the tournament matching aspect, but not with the deep aspect of data or statistics, not with lists, not with commanders, not, so a solid system, but not as deep as stats can be. So before we jump in the community questions and more talk about the site itself, what is your recommendation? I mean, you just said you're not playing anymore, but still there's an active community, and I can just say out of what we done in the last year, and other content creators too, we are still building this community up, and especially in Germany and Europe, it grows and grows. I hear it's a little bit declining in US. That's what I heard, right? I don't know, but I heard it's declining a little bit. But in Europe, it's definitely rising and getting more professional. It's getting bigger. So what is your recommendation for us as players post stats? I mean, where should we go? What should we do? What, right? Is there anything, did you even think about it?
Yes. So I mean, so there are a few things going on there. Firstly, the site is more actively used currently than ever before. So for all my internal metrics, the game is growing, right? Like it's always been hard for me whether or not the site reflects the game fully. But I mean, the site has 7,500 active users. That's like it's at least like it's more than 50% of all the people who have ever joined the Facebook community, right? So it's a large enough percentage of the community that I think it has a good finger on the pulse as to how active the game is. You see all sorts of annual trends and interesting things like that around like how active the game is. The game really comes into an active season as the national events start to happen. But again, that might be just due to the way that the site is more focused on the big events. Obviously, that's how people see it. They see it as a tournament tool in a lot of cases. So the game is still very active, and I mean, in my own local community, I know that there's interest in the game sort of like sparking back up. And I know that Dead Meta Gaming, who are still active and just about within distance for us to go and play against and kind of be part of their community. I know that they're looking to restart events that they were running and stuff like that. The UK community itself is starting to have a bit of a revival. So there was I was really disappointed that there was a huge lull in the UK community as soon as I stepped away from trying to push it forward. Like as soon as I wasn't running UK nationals, whether or not it happened to be a lull in the game at the same time or, but like I was really disappointed that as soon as I wasn't running UK nationals, it wasn't as prestigious as event as it previously was. So I wasn't able to compete in the same events that like I'd been, trying to create and try to run. So I don't think that the song community is in crisis or anything like that. I think I have been so well aware of the role that Hits and Crits has played in reviving the German community and really just bringing that activity back. I think that it's super important to publicly show the activity. I think that that's one of the things that stats really provides, is it shows you that people are playing games. The site has 25,000 results submitted every year. That's 2,000 results every single month.
That's strong.
No. It shows that the game is actively being played and actively being it is still really strong. The issue is, what happens after stats? I think I was not surprised, but I was interested at the range of different things that people find value in stats from. For some people, there are really dedicated stats users. Stats is a really large part of the game for them. And that includes, badges. It includes their player ranking. It includes all sorts of different things. It includes like trophies on their profiles, stuff like that. They're really sad to see their player history and what might happen to that, their history of their games and stuff. There are other players who are were just asking, okay, what other list builders exist? I only really use it for list building. The biggest thing, in my opinion, the thing that stats provides, but this is my opinion and it's not true of everybody, is I think that it provides a central hub for tournaments. I think for me, tournaments, I actually prefer to call them events. Events for the game are the single most important driver and shower of activity. And I think that you must, in this incredibly congested and competitive gaming field, like there are so many games competing for people's attention and time and play and stuff like that. You must show that the game is active. You must really convince people that it's worth investing your time. You will be able to find opponents, you will be able to find events, you will be able to play this game, and it won't get abandoned any minute now. And I think that people who are very casual players, be it never attending events and never or just doing it very casually, never consider themselves to go to events for the tournament aspect. They're not trying to win events, they're not trying to be national champion or anything like that. I think they underestimate how important and valuable it is to everybody else that they see that the game is active, that they see other people are enjoying this game, and that you can submit your results, your tournament, your everything about you playing, that you can be involved in a global community, that you can be involved in something bigger than just a game. You're not just playing a match, you're playing a match against another person who you know what their history is like, you know what your history is like.
Yeah.
Winning or losing against any given player, it now has a context in like a much bigger global struggle, a global struggle for domination, you know.
Yeah.
But like in a nice way, you understand that if you just lost to somebody, it's not so bad. Maybe you just lost to the world's #2 player. You don't need to feel bad about losing to that. You know, you can really, or one of the things that the site really uniquely does, yes, you may have just lost, but you just lost to the most powerful list in the game. And you can take solace in the fact that like they were playing something incredibly powerful. It's objectively measured to be super powerful. And you can tell yourself, well, that was good practice. I understand that. So your question, what fills the void? There are many things which run tournaments and are tournament hubs. I was surprised at how quickly Longshanks made a public announcement that they would be adding stats.
Yeah, that came quick. Yeah.
I've always been aware of Longshanks. Longshanks was only a Guild Ball based site when stats first existed. And then, of course, Guild Ball kind of was killed by its developers, and that's when Longshanks started to, you know, segue into other things. So I think that Longshanks is the second best thing that exists.
Okay.
But I need to be really clear with the community that Longshanks runs 40 to 50 different game systems. Yeah. And it's not built on the same foundations. It's quite similar, but it's basically it's a plain simple ELO system. Though I would say that of all the things that people are losing, the super complex mathematics that I implemented isn't top of the list because I don't think that people particularly understand it. So Guild Ball, Longshanks could be a central hub for tournaments. It could still continue to show value. But I think the community needs to be really well aware that it will not be bespoke to Song. I've not spoken with the creator of Longshanks. They seem to be actively trying to gauge with the community what the community would want and need. But I would say for a start, you might not even get 2-list functionality.
Yeah, which is exactly big breaker, right?
Yeah. So if you're definitely not going to get, it doesn't have a list builder. It never will build. I did see that he publicly stated when somebody asked, they never will build a list builder. They are not going to maintain a list builder for 40 different games at the same time.
Sure.
So you're not going to get list-based statistics.
Yeah.
You probably won't even get commander-based statistics. All you'll see is faction statistics. And also it does do statistics, but it's a simple win-loss ratio, which I think is very poor as statistics go, but at least it shows some, unlike others. Also, it is monetized. It's a business. Like it's looking to make money out of the Song community, which we can go on and talk about. Like, if you want a long-term project in Song, if you want a tool, somebody has to make some money because there's a lot of work. Otherwise, you're reliant on passion, and passion can only take you so far. Yeah, and it's clear that the Longshanks creator, it's not, then presumably not passionate about all 40 of these games. So I know that there is monetization around you being able to see the statistics. So all it will be is a tournament tool. Could a different site, I'm well aware that there's discussion around, I believe it's called A Song of Ice and Fire Nexus. There are people who want to replace or take over stats. So for those who've wanted, I was surprised. The thing that really surprised me was the number of people who approached me and not only just wanted to take over stats, but they wanted to purchase the site from me. Coming back to the discussion about the site as its current state, I cannot sell the current site, the old site.
Why is that?
Because its maintenance is so much effort to maintain. Again, I will just say, if you could maintain the current site, you can build a better site, and you should build a better site. That is what I've been trying to do for the past 2 years. Rather than trying to maintain the current site, I've been trying to build a new, better site. Unfortunately, trying to do both at the same time has really meant that building the new site has been incredibly problematic, because I've been distracted. The site requires lots of maintenance. And just I've drifted away from the game in that time at the same time. So the two things have come together, but it's not one or the other. So my opinion is that what people want, what they don't know they want, but what they actually want is for me to have finished site 2.0.
Yeah.
But realistically, that's still a huge amount of work. And I think that the speed at which a lot of people have decided that they want to build and replace something similar to stats, I think they wildly underestimated how much development work that is, how much maintenance work it is. And also just that it's kind of crazy. The site wouldn't exist were it not for the special time of COVID. No sane person would build a Song of Ice and Fire stats. You have to be crazy to do it.
We talked about it, yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm not as crazy as I once was, which is why I thought that I would be able to build 2.0. I thought I still had that crazy desire in me to do it, but unfortunately it's not there. And so you're either looking at it to be a big financial success, and I don't think that can be achieved. Nowhere near the amount of time that you must put in. It will not be a good input of your time if you tried to pay somebody else to develop it for you. I don't think that amount
it'd be
of money
way
exists.
too expensive, right? I mean, could you put that in numbers a little bit more? I mean, you said that the maintenance of the site is so resourceful and takes so much time. Could you put that a little bit into? I think we still need some more numbers or some more context on how deep this site is, because when to be honest, right, when I saw people heading out saying take it over, build new, and all this all the stuff that happened around it, I was actually thinking before we spoke, and I wasn't even aware about this COVID factor and you putting so much time during COVID. I wasn't even aware, and I was thinking this is way bigger and way more work than you guys think. And then we had our deep talk, and I was really seeing, and that really opened my eyes too, because to be honest, Chris was always also thinking about, can we somehow rescue this? Not meaning buying, taking over, just thinking we were thinking about bringing money together, right, to do something or whatever it was. We were just brainstorming about it, but I was never thinking about building something right off the bat, because I was totally aware that this deep system of just one singular game will take a lot of resources, which we do not have, because we are not like a community which has unlimited resources and stuff, and that amount of money. And we talked about how much money you would need to pay a developer when we have our deep talk. So maybe you can give us a little bit more context and numbers on what it is, right?
Yeah. So I estimate, and you know, like, and so this is even considering it was wildly inefficient the way I built the site because of the way it grew inorganically. So I'm not even trying to say, oh, like if I valued all the time and, you know, like I don't consider that. What I'm mostly considering is the time, knowing everything I know now, knowing what the site could and should be if built. Like if you saw stats and you said, okay, I just want to re-implement it, I want it to be a bit shinier, I want it to be a 2.0, and I know that it's going to have to run tournaments, it's going to have to have a build, it's going to have these things. For me, if you wanted to pay somebody, I think you would be underselling it if you thought that it cost 5 figures, i.e. like £10,000, you know, like 13,000 euros or whatever that is, or you know, like whatever that is in dollars. If you thought that the development cost was that $10,000, pounds, whatever, I think you'd already have to be getting somebody who was doing it for the love of it, not for financial reasons.
Yeah.
So, and that's just to build it now, or even what I consider it would be for me to finish the unfinished 2.0 version of the site, and I'm already somewhere down the line. So for it to be worth my time or something like that, I would put that kind of ballpark figure on it, which, if we're all honest with ourselves, I just don't think exists inside a community the size of Song. That kind of financial, you know, money doesn't exist anywhere other than huge games with much bigger player bases. So I think if you want there to be a bespoke tool inside of Song, it either has to basically be much smaller, simpler, with a much, you know, more defined goal, something that helps share tournaments or, you know, do those things, but that the site is a builder and it's a tournament builder, and it also, you know, tries to do these global statistics, and it has your own personal profile, and it has badges, and it has the Hall of Champions, and it tries to, whenever possible, whenever people send me tournaments that they want to have like banners on the site, I try to do all of that, try to help, you know, because I think that that's the most important thing that the site does is promote people's events. Even if you didn't try to implement it all, I think you are talking like really large amounts of money that I don't think people really estimate. So you either need an amount of money, which I don't think is feasible, or you're built upon people's passion and desire to do it. What's very uncommon is that somebody has the passion, the time and the skills all at the same, you know, at the same time. And so, you know, that's what happened during that special period is that I had those three things. But I have a lot less time and I have a lot less passion now. I have a lot more skills. My coding is a lot better than it was, which helps, you know, alleviate the other two. But it's not that nobody could. I'm not saying nobody could build stats. I really think that, you know, lots of people could, especially considering that I've shown what could exist. Although I come back to this idea, it's barely touched the surface on what I wanted it to achieve and what I think is possible if you get into all sorts of great ideas around sharing campaigns. You know, an example is like the new narrative mission could easily have been built into the site such that it was a global struggle to see which side wins. You know, like everybody could have submitted results which were specific to the Stony Shore scenario, and we could have had a global running tracker of which side is winning. But unfortunately, things like that can't exist in a vacuum. I had no idea that it was coming out until it was already out. Development time on that will take, you know, for unique bespoke things will be loads of time. And, you know, I even actually tried to do something along those lines in the past in conjunction with some people, but the problem is that also if you don't want it built by one individual, you're reliant on everybody's passion aligning together, and people's interest will rise and fall, and people will drop away. And so you're reliant on loads of people being really active together and somebody really managing the project. And I think all of those things become difficult.
Yeah.
At times I have worked with other people in the past, but their passion stopped before we ever, got anywhere. And so it's been difficult.
It's like you just mentioned it. Like, does the shutdown of stats, does that have to do anything with CMON not collaborating with content, or let's not say content creators, let's just say creators or like influential people in the game of Song? Does that have something to do, because I'm not aware that you somehow collaborated, and I'm well aware that CMON in the past didn't maybe have the resources or something to really work closely with content creators. I don't know. Just saying, does that the publisher of the game, or like it's publisher, right? So does that anything have to do with the shutdown of stats, or is it, and like follow-up question, would you recommend, even you mentioned creators out there willing to take on the task, are you recommending building a new site in this current status of the game?
So what I would say is that, in my mind, CMON are they are a Kickstarter company, and they are a board game company. I think that Song is a very special case for them. When you look at their catalog of what they do, Song is quite unique. Possibly Tactics will be, like really it's second in it. Of course, they have historically they have a game called Dark Age, which possibly could be considered sort of like the precursor to Song in some kind of ways. But Song, as it currently stands in their catalog, stands out as the only tabletop war game as opposed to tabletop board game. It's very simple to just say there's not a lot of difference between the two, but I believe that there really is. War games require a community, and like a really engaged community, whereas board games, generally speaking, all you need is to kind of answer a few rules questions on the forum.
They stand on their own.
Everybody sits down to the table and plays a board game, and everybody begins at the same position, and only one person really needs to have to own it. They bring the game to everybody else, but because of the fact that everybody owns different aspects, different armies, and they bring their two armies to the table and they meet and they play, it needs to be a constantly evolving ecosphere, and you need there to be a really active community. And I think that when you run a war game, you need to be prepared to be really, really far more actively engaged with the community. And I don't think that CMON really want that. So I definitely don't think that they want to engage with the competitive community. But again, what I say by competitive is the people running events, the people going to events, who I believe are the lifeblood of the game surviving. If you want the game to be anything more than two people who play, like two family members who play on their kitchen table, similar to the way the vast majority of board games are played, if you want it to be something that are played at games clubs, that are played at big events, that have people gathering and hosting to come and play this game, you have to champion those who are championing the game for you.
Yes.
And I don't think that CMON have ever really made that leap. I just don't think that they have the same vision for the game that I have for it. I always had a vision from when I first played it that this could be the greatest event-based game ever, just because of the way that it doesn't use a true line of sight. It's very low maintenance in terms of like setting up an event. All you need is a flat table, 4x4 on a mat. Everybody brings their own terrain. There are very few discussions about line of sight and charging and stuff like that. Movement because of the trays, should be really solid. I thought that it had potential through this beautiful merging of a war game and a board game to be the ultimate event game. But I don't think that they see it that way. And so I don't think there's space for me in the community as somebody who really always wanted to drive that aspect of the game. I don't think that they see the same future for the game as I do. As to your question, would somebody else build it? I in all consciousness, in all good faith, I could not tell somebody that I think that they should rebuild A Song of Ice and Fire Stats. I think that way madness lies. I'm not saying it'll be a total waste of your time or anything like that, but you know, like if I transported myself back 5 years, I would tell myself, don't do it. You know,
don't do it. Don't do it. Go running.
Don't do it. You know, I would say you should pick a game whose developers are much more focused on events and want to bring the competitive aspect of their game to the table, and want to champion that side of it. And so I think that that's always been the struggle for the site, is that I just don't think that what I want for the game is at all aligned with what CMON want for the game. And so I've never, I don't see a future for myself, and I don't see a future for the site, unfortunately. You know, I know that the community are very, especially some people, are very passionate about the site. And I'm not sorry to turn off the current site, but I am really sad and sorry that I never delivered the second one, the real one, the other site, the new site. Yeah, I'm really sorry that you never got to see it. I'm sorry that we didn't get there. And you know, but that's the reality of where we're at. Yeah, I did try my best. Like in reality, the site, I knew that the site was switching off 3 to 6 months ago, unless something changed, unless there was a big change in you know, in the future of the game, and the way and whether or not the Invitational was going to be the start of a huge series of wonderful things, or if it was going to be my goodbye to the community.
Goodbye tournament. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it's been made clear to me that, like, you know, they don't see a future in that. They don't want to support that. I think a lot of people picked up on that in the announcement. Like, that's not, you know, that it's not the reason. But it really, you know, it emphasized to me that they don't want the same things from the game that I want from the game. And so I think that's the misalignment. If other people believe that they have that support from CMON, and that CMON are telling them that they do want that from the site, then yes, maybe I could say, okay, we'll go ahead. You go ahead and build A Song of Ice and Fire Stats 2. You go and build A Song of Ice and Fire Nexus, whatever it is. You go and build your own thing. But my experience over the past 5 years is that they don't see that future for the game. So unless they've directly told you that they are going to support that, I don't think you ever will get support for it from them.
Yeah, might be. What I see in the past is that, like, on a positive aspect, or which basically like goes side to side what you just said. What we see on the positive side of things, CMON is actively pushing for a better organized play in terms of, like, doing the realms of battles and having people approaching people in like Germany, or like in Poland, obviously, and in US and stuff, and also content creator collaborations, like with the you mentioned the Stony Shore scenario. So content creators were able to get that early on and all that kind of stuff. So I that basically fuels what you were saying. I think it's just another direction. There is definitely stuff happening, and I appreciate how CMON, especially like on the marketing side of things, puts out the spoiler stuff, right? Because we didn't have that, right? Like years back, we were talking about, you know, what is Simon cooking? When is the patch coming out? When is that? When is this? So just for myself, I see that it became a much better job in these kind of aspects, in terms of like the realms of battle, content creator collaborations, and also the marketing side of things, the public relations side of things. But I can also relate to what you just said, like in terms of like being high end competitive, having statistics for it, having the invitational, like having a ranking system saying this is the best player in the world. It probably goes somewhere else. I was also thinking with the scenario, I was thinking, oh, this is interesting. This is totally way off from being like balanced or competitive, but it's interesting, right? It's interesting. It brings in narratives, basically what Shane is doing, right? I mean, Shane from
Yeah,
right, which I do not get tired of saying. This man is incredible, right? I mean, and now they're going into the same direction with the Stony Shore scenario, and what I hear is there are more coming out. So yeah, let's see what that brings. But again, I see how it.
And what's unfortunate there is that again, even not to say that you misunderstand or anything like that, but again, you highlight that you think that the site is competitive, right? But to me, the site isn't supposed to be competitive. The site is actually in its in everything that it does, it tries to be the antithesis of competitive gaming. It ranks players as a byproduct, because you cannot rank balance unless you know how strong the players are, right? But I actually thought and believed, and I think that its greatest potential is in spreading narrative campaigns, spreading just like general engagement with the game. That's what things like the badges are for. That's what anything. It wants to do anything and everything it can to champion the game. The site that you have been given, the site that the community has, and the way the site has ended up are all event and competition focused, because that's the thing that the community wanted back, right? And it's the only thing that I could give them. I cannot give them narrative scenarios. I cannot give them other big things without contact from Simon, without knowing that they're coming, without having routes to do that. To me, the site could have and should have been the ultimate non-competitive engagement tool, which has sides that make competitive gamers still enjoy it. Because I am at my heart, a competitive gamer. I like to challenge myself, and I like to win, and I like to be able to try to win with the least powerful lists as well. What I want to, when I'm already winning, I want to challenge myself more and more and more and more by playing less powerful stuff and see if I can still win. So that's why it has those numbers and it has that focus. But to me, the site actually should be the ultimate companion tool and way to spread your game. But I could not and cannot do those things without engagement from Simon at an early level. And the site has moved further and further and further towards the competitive side of gaming, because that's where the community engaged with it. And that's what I've been able to give the community. And so it's unfortunate that they either, because of timing, because they weren't working with any content creators at that time, or again, because they possibly misunderstand the site, as many people do. Just because it has a ranking system, they think that it is ultra competitive, and they think that it is elitist. A lot of people use those words, but it is the antithesis of those things. It's actually why I hesitate to compare it to any other ranking system like Longshanks, because again, I think Longshanks is a brilliant site. I like it. I would probably use it if stats didn't exist, but it will promote you to run the most powerful thing in the game, because all it will tell people is whether or not you're winning or losing. And so there will be no reason for you not to try and win by putting the best thing in the game on the table. So yeah, it's unfortunate that the site and Simon's vision for the game continued to diverge across the years, all because they're not involved in the site. If they were involved in the site, then the site could implement all sorts of wonderful campaign, single scenario, engagement campaigns. You know, just like by that I mean, you know, just play a game in a month and in a given month, and you can have a badge. Play with a certain unit at a certain time during, like, you know, play with this specific list, and we'll do, and you'll be able to kind of unlock some certain things on the site. But if I can't discuss that future with them, then how can I implement it myself?
Sure. Like from the chat, I just saw like Christian Oberdorf saying 12,000 euros is not so much. I spent more money on other useless things. so like I think like the key question is, would money make you reconsider? I think this is like the core question in all the questions from the chat. Would you like in selling it? Would you make money off of it? Is that a factor, or are you saying, you know, money is not really? I mean, we're talking realistic money, right? We're not sure at a certain amount of money, everyone will say yes, I do it, right? But is money a factor for you?
Yes. So I mean, the simple answer is yes. That of course there is an amount of money for which I will do the work for, right? And that is in the region of what I've discussed, you know, like, but I need to be really clear that I don't think it exists. I mean, I assume that's a throwaway comment, right? Like, if I thought that the community wanted to pay for the site, I would have tried to raise money to keep me around, right? Like, I think that the announcement itself has made it harder for everybody, right? Like, if I believed that Simon wanted to work with the site, I think that the announcement that the site is closing down has made that partnership harder, right? Like, you know, now my relationship to the community and the community's relationship with the site are now more complicated if we wanted to continue. But of course, there is an amount of money for which I would do the work. I just don't believe it exists. And of course, if Simon showed that the site does have a future and that I have a future in the site, I would also continue.
So it's the two, right? It's the factor we just discussed about, right? And it's money.
Yeah, it's either. And on the money aspect, you know, in the announcement, I put in a relatively throwaway comment of, you know, I don't want to shoulder the financial burden. The Patreons almost cover the site, the fees for the site, but it's not quite. Actually, at their peak, the number of Patreons of the site are down because, of course, over the last 2 years, they've been well aware that I've not been actively maintaining the site. The site has actually switched off features. I'm not surprised that people, you know, people are no longer supporting it. I offer less than I did 2 years ago. There are features that used to exist on the site 2 years ago that don't exist anymore. You used to be able to get a lot more detailed statistics on your profile, things like that, but they broke. And I wasn't putting the work into fixing them. I was putting the work into building a 2.0. So again, what we're talking about is, can a 2.0 be achieved? If I thought that it could, I tried to make it happen 3 or so months ago. I put out feelers to some people who supposedly, you know, were in more direct contact with Simon. I've never had, you know, conversations with Simon about the site. That just hasn't happened. Other people say that they would, you know, pass on to Simon that if something didn't happen soon, then, you know, basically the site was going to close down. As far as I'm aware, people told me that information has been passed on, and so they have been aware that if they wanted to be in contact with the site, then they could save it, right? Or all they need to do is start the conversations. But I don't think that will happen, because the time for that to happen was 3 months ago when they were made aware of it. They have not chosen to act upon that. I don't know why they would now choose to act upon it, other than, I don't know, because it's publicly, publicly known. But I wouldn't have it publicly known if I thought that that would help its case. I don't think that the announcement hasn't been to save stats. The announcement has been the decision has been made 3 months ago.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I need to make everybody else aware of it so that you have time. It would have been in my benefit actually to just close it. You know, like I've been bombarded by people since, and it's been very distracting from work on the Invitational. So yeah, there is an amount of money,
mm-hmm.
and there is a relationship, either of which can save the site. But I do not believe that either are going to happen. I don't think the money exists in this game, and I don't think that CMON see the same future for the game as I do.
Okay. So yeah, so I would recommend. I see some comments again from Christian that he is serious to pay 12,000 euros for it. I think the answer is that there could be a future for stats in case there is the option to get a certain amount of money off of it, and there is some kind of collaboration, at least a deeper collaboration on the publisher side. So, but an interesting question remains. Let's just say, in case that does not happen, and we can't make it happen, right? Because right? Is there a way, or do you see a way to make the existing data somehow available to the community, or would you say, which would be in my mind totally understandable, to saying, this stays right here and right here in my server. How do you feel about the existing data, the past data?
Yeah, I was interested to find that actually the number of people who were concerned about losing their data. I hadn't fully, really prepared for that side of things. I thought that the functionality of the site and that it smooths the transition between you doing a two-list pairing and submitting a game mode and all those kind of things was the loss. So on the data side of things, funnily enough, I was torn. I was on the fence with 2.0 that I was possibly going to delete your data anyway.
Okay.
I understand now that would not have gone down that well. So that's interesting.
And the badges.
Yes. No. So, well, actually, I was going to implement an entirely new badge system, much more detailed, much better. Yes. So the data itself, it would be a lot of work for me.
Yeah, I can assume.
That available, right? Like, as I say, there stats 1.0, the current version of stats, old stats, has actually really big database issues. That's one of its most fundamental coding issues, that it's split across two databases. It has a real-time database, which sort of works with your games as they're being created. And then there's another database which stores their long-term data. AWS does the long-term, and Google Firebase. Don't ask. It was a crazy time. I don't know why I made that decision. That's one of the biggest things that needs to be rectified on the 2.0. Can your data be made available? I mean, the short answer is no. The work to do so is high. Okay. And the way the data is structured also, why would you want to carry that over into a new site when again, one of the things that I really wanted to improve was the efficiency of the way data is structured, allowing us to provide what you're trying to balance in a system this complex is you're trying to balance the depth of the data that you can capture, the game, the mode, the players, the list, the score, all these things. How detailed is that structure going to be versus how big is that data in size? And when we start talking about the fact that the site has closing on 100,000 games saved, and that's actually people might forget, those who haven't been around long enough, that the site actually already did wipe everybody's data at some point. This is only since the 2021 seasonal update, which actually came in 2022. For those who remember that far back, it actually came in January 2022. So in the past 3 years, there's been over 75,000 games. But before that, everybody's profiles were actually wiped, and we did a full clean thing at that point. So in a lot of ways, that was always my intention with 2.0. Can your data be saved? Realistically, on stats, it could. On
but nowhere else.
Project, I just don't see it happening. Again, it would be a very large amount of work for not loads of gain. Somebody could build something which allows you to, import your profile, like as manually from the site as much as you can build it from the database, as far as I'm aware.
Okay. Understood. Yeah. So, but that fuels me, or that brings up another question, which actually comes from Samuel Stoll in the chat. He says, however, would you be willing, or he understands that, site 1.0 could not be sold, or is not really for, for selling due to the reasons you discussed. However, would you be willing to sell your up to now work on 2.0 as it is, as you said, right down the line, so other devs can use it as a base for a new platform?
I mean, again, it's not my intention.
Okay.
The easiest answer to all these questions about money and sale is that wasn't my intention. I may be leaving money on the table, but I'm walking away from it. But the intention of this discussion right now, and the intention of the announcement, wasn't for me to make a quick buck and leave. Yeah. Right. Exactly. For me, I will admit that I am quite protective of stats. I always have been.
Obviously, and this is totally understandable. I mean,
so I am very protective of the algorithms and the way they work. I don't think that the community, like I say, I don't think that that's the thing that the community are worried about losing the most. But I think that they're very unique, and they hold a lot of value to me. So they're something that I don't think that I want to sell at all, right? Like that would only be something that would be licensed, right? And then, of course, if we're talking about a license that requires maintenance, that means that I have to continue to work on it. So we're talking about ongoing problems, and suddenly our barrier to sale is quite high. Again, if I thought that that was a route that people were interested in taking, I would have approached people in private. I am surprised at the number of people who think that there's that level of value in it inside of Song itself. I think that there is that value in it inside of other games, larger games. But I'm surprised that, the strength of the Song community's response to it. In terms of money, as I say, we touched on like it being a financial burden, but only in as much as I believe that every content realistically in this game is a financial burden to somebody, right? Even if you're talking about people who make YouTube videos that do battle reports, chances are that the film equipment that they buy, the cameras that they buy, are all way more expensive than any amount of money they will ever get back. I think everybody who gets into this knows that they're not here to make a profit, and that was not the intent when I began the site. I have always been very anti-monetizing the site because, again, I built it for me as a player. It's what I wanted. So I was always very against it having advertising on it, against it having banners. And I understand that other people now think, well, okay, if you've done that, if you tried to make money out of it.
If you did it,
Right, yes. Yeah. But I guess the reality is that that wasn't the intent. That I've built a site that I'm less proud of 1.0, super proud of 2.0, right? Like I'm super proud, or like 2.0 exists in my head as in its finished state. it's not there, right? Like, but to me, it's like it looks
for you,
looks good, it works quick, smooth. Page loading times are good. It does all these fancy things which I haven't even built yet. And it gets back to the core of what the site tries to do, rather than, you know, jumping all over the place in response to what the community want from it. So again, none of those things are supposed to be like, I'm really, really happy with the response to it, the number of results that it's had, the amount of community that are on there, and that the community have really warmed to it. But what I'm most happy is that, like, it was proof that these ideas that I had 5 years ago around game balance and how you can measure it, in my opinion, really have been founded to be true. And I take great value in that, even if other people don't. So that's the thing that's really very difficult for me to put a price on and to sell. And I think that I'm not really wanting to give up, you know. There are a whole, you know, there are tons and tons of games out there, and there are many years left to try and like realize the ideas that I have. You know, like, so what I'm trying to say is it was not the intent, but I can be convinced that that song is the right game to continue this in, right? Like, in my mind, I want to take the learnings that I've created, all the things that I've done right, learnings from the things that I didn't do right, the ways that you kind of get the community on board, and I want to try and find a new home for it. And I don't think that's compatible with selling what I've already created, right? Like, then they're not unique, they're not special, they're not, you know. And so I am very sad that it hasn't happened in song, but, you know.
Understand. Like,
I'm not trying to get people to convince me to stay. You know.
But we had the question.
How many people are trying to convince me to stay? Like, I am genuinely surprised. Like,
but which is good, right? I mean, you see that us as a community did not really give up the same way that you did on stats, and we want to save it somehow. So I guess, and we had, like, to be frank, right? We had the same discussions, and we talked about a few, you know, opportunities, and but now we also feel we should, like, let the dust settle a little bit, and then you know, just see where it goes, right? I mean, and Jerome from the chat also talks about open source, making the code available open source. So that, but you already answered it, just saying there is interest
on open source, right? Like, that would be I perceive there to be value in the site, and there clearly is value because people want to buy it. Open source would be me just like giving away that value for free.
Exactly.
And it's not that I haven't given up on the idea of A Song of Ice and Fire stats. I just no longer think that A Song of Ice and Fire is the right game for it. And so I think that it's time for me to move on to a new game. To move on to new communities, and it really harms my ability to do that if I make what I've created freely available.
Understandable, totally understandable. Like that. We had that question earlier, and it was even in the questions we got from the community, like beforehand. There was the really cool question. I felt. So what games did you move on to, or will you move on to? I think that's quite interesting on a side chat here, like shortly.
Yeah, I mean, these are not for the site. Like, what I personally moved on to immediately after song was so like I say, I pretty much played UK nationals just over a year ago. So that was actually in 2023, in November or October or something, 2023. And I was intending to go to Polish nationals as well, just a week later. I finally played in UK Nationals as a player, and that was off of the back of like I had been to every GT in the UK in the build up to it, and I was super pleased that like I really committed and focused to being a player for a while, again, which was sort of put development of the site kind of took a back seat to the fact that for a while I really wanted to focus on just being a player and enjoying the competitive event-based community that
I can relate.
Really yeah. And so I was really happy that I managed to win like the whole series of GTs that year, and I won UK Nationals. And then I really hoped to go to Polish Nationals because it was the biggest event of the year. And then unfortunately there was, the universe had other plans. There was a huge storm, and as I arrived at the airport to fly out to Poland, all the flights were cancelled and I couldn't go. So I was very disappointed and also a bit burnt out with the game because I'd been like really heavily committed to this like 6 months of just playing in every event going and really focusing on the game as a player. So I thought I'd give it some time. And then along came Legions Imperialis, which is, people who do or don't know, is Epic 3.0, whatever you want to call it.
Something like that. Yeah,
huge fan of Epic Armageddon back in the day. And some people I know were really big into Adeptus Titanicus already, so I had loads of stuff. And so what I moved on to was playing Legions Imperialis. Instantly, I was like, yeah, this isn't an event game, right? Like coming back to what is great about Song, it's not an event game. You can barely play a game in 3 hours. It's wildly unbalanced. It's great. It's crazy the level of imbalance in that game. You effectively have to agree what kind of lists you're going to build in partnership with each other. Otherwise, you can't get an enjoyable game. If one person brings like a heavily competitive list and another person brings a relatively balanced list, it's not even a game. Like, so so it really helped me appreciate things that Song did do. But at the same time, I've always had a love affair with Horus Heresy and 30,000, right? So that was like scratching a very different itch that I hadn't had in a long time, and I enjoyed playing that at the club. But really, I just fell back into playing board games on a really regular basis. I'm a big fan of 2, 3, 4, 5 players sitting down at a table, and at the start point of the game, everybody's equal. There is no game imbalance at that point, right? And then you play, and then it's all done in 2 hours, and you play a different game, and you play a different game. Song was a very special case for me. I had never played a game so committedly for 2-3 years continuously. Actually, usually we flip between game to game, loads of campaign-based games like Necromunda, Mordheim. The Games Club are currently obsessed with Trench Crusade.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. In Germany too.
Yeah, I've not got onto Trench Crusade myself. None of these games, though, are things that I think are, compatible with what the site tries to achieve. I'm not desperately looking for a new game to implement the site in. I just think that it can and should be built. I actually, I wanted or intended to take some time to think about it. I'm not saying, oh, I'm taking a Song of Ice and Fire stats and I'm making Warhammer 40,000 stats, right? Like, even though, Warhammer 40,000 is the gold standard. I'm not trying to move it to a new game. What I want is if in the future I think that there is another game which is super compatible with it. There are games that I actually think would really, really benefit from it. But
so
some of them already have things that exist, right? Like you have to understand that like Longshanks hasn't tried to play, tried to support Song because stats exist. If you're going to come into a game which already has a system, it's a much bigger barrier than one that doesn't. It's again why timing was so special with Song, that what I was working on and interested in was at a time where Song was still in its infancy, and that's where you realistically need to capture a game which feels right and is right for the game and the community and the site.
Yeah. So Mickey is asking about Middle Earth. I was thinking when you just said, I was thinking about Legion, Star Wars Legion, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Just just throwing it out there.
Interestingly, honestly, it's a flip of a coin that it wasn't Legion stats as opposed to Song stats.
Yeah.
People will see, actually, I think literally right here.
Yeah, it's right there. Yeah, I see it.
This is all Legion stuff.
Yeah.
I was about to play. I started playing Legion, Star Wars Legion, and I started playing Song.
Me too.
At the same
exactly
time.
the same. Exactly the same.
The two games are incredibly similar. Alternating activations.
Yeah, and the cards.
Hero cards. Yeah. All those board game aspects brought in. So to me, I decided quite early on, they're two games that are so incredibly similar that I shouldn't play them both. There's no need to get heavily involved in both. Yeah. I would rather, go to one of them rather than the other. And the club, just like the gaming group that I play with, we just leant towards Song, and then that gathered speed. And there were some events that we went to down in Birmingham, a few hours away from where we live, and it was a Song of Ice and Fire stats, But
cool. Got it.
Really, if I'd gotten up on the other side of the bed one day, it could have
been Legion. It could have been Legion.
Yeah. MESBG, it has a very active community and stuff. I know that the Great British Hobbit League is incredibly active. But like I say, like, you'd be trying to tear that away from Longshanks. It's a very different conversation. They're really well established as a community. And again, I'm not trying to come in and disrupt somebody else's, long-standing communities and commitments and whatever. If I think stats was the only time when you asked me before, would I tell somebody else to do it? I think stats, I was very much like allowing the cart to lead the horse, as it were. I wanted it to exist, and I loved this game so much that I was willing to build it at no matter the personal time and cost and stuff like that. I just wanted it to exist so badly that I was willing to do anything to make it happen. But now, realistically, it has to be the horse leading the cart. Somebody, like, I have to be convinced that the game is right and that there is a future for that in the game. Like, I won't start it. I would never start it again and just hope that it works, because the sheer amount of work in the early days, including like promotional work, videos, chats, everything, YouTube work, constant posting and stuff like that. And even to this day, it's unfortunate that there are some people, like on the Facebook group, who say really horrible things, horrible things about the site, because I've never been able to communicate well enough with them that it's not what they think. I think Stats, A Song of Ice and Fire Stats, was one of the worst names that I could have given it. If I was going to give anybody any advice, don't call it Stats. That brings with it, people already have preconceived ideas about what that is. They already don't like stats, right? They don't like statistics. And so, yeah, I would have called it something else. I think Nexus is a much better name.
Okay, so it's probably more of a personal question, but like, what did make you move away from the game itself, you as a player? Like, is there anything particular, like you said, burned out with the game? And I think everyone can relate out there that at a certain point because Song can be repetitive at times, right? I mean, especially when you play it like intensively, then you always have the same game modes. You always have, the same, and especially you have a certain meta. You have the same matchups, right? So it can be repetitive. Apart from that, was there an additional reason for you to say, I step away from the game, not the community, but the game?
No, I think the game is great. Like, I still think that the game is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I did actually discuss it a little bit when the last seasonal update came up. There was a very when the season 5 came out, which was a good 6 months or so ago now. The people were well aware that I hadn't played. I didn't do a change video with Mickey. I think that was the first season that I ever didn't go through the changes with people. People were well aware that like I was less invested in those changes. But there was just an open discussion in the Discord afterwards, and some people asked whether or not I was interested in the game and I was playing the game back then. I think that the game is wonderfully balanced right now. I think that any factions can win. I do think that without going off into a whole tangent, because I can talk for hours, but I do think that we achieved that balance by making the game a little bit less exciting. I think that rather than bringing up the low performers, which was what I would love to have seen over years and years and years, we kept taking the high performers, which is anybody who can do something exciting, do something explosive, have cards that really change the game, have really make you as the player feel like you're doing something great. We kept taking those cards and knocking them down a peg, and took the most powerful units and knocked them down a peg.
Yeah.
We achieved balance, but it wasn't. I think that the game became a little bit. It lost a little bit. The factions lost a little bit of their uniqueness over those years.
Absolutely. By copying the abilities, right? I mean,
and that the same ability appears in nearly every faction, like in somebody's commander card or something like that. So, but that's not the reason why I don't play. Like I still think the game is wonderful, and I just think it's a little bit less exciting than it used to be. I think there's a little bit less ability on the table for you to make great plays. It is burnout, but not burnout with the game. I was, as I say, playing loads as a player. What I was most disappointed by was that as soon as I wasn't putting in huge amounts of work into the UK specific community, running those events, promoting those events, that they took a huge dive.
It got down. Oh man.
Yeah. This also comes in a time frame where the UK was having lots of supply issues with the game. And so I felt that I just wasn't able to play the game as a player and get all the things that I wanted out of it. I wanted to play in UK nationals and have it be a really big international event. But unfortunately, when I wasn't running it, it wasn't a big international event. I do think that when I left I think there's a good analogy actually for the site and the possible futures around Song. When I first left, there was a hole left in the UK community because I'd become such a large part of it. I ran so many of the GTs, did so much YouTube, such a lot, and people were well aware that I was moving away and not doing it. And there was a hole and there was a big slump, but actually the UK community is climbing out of that hole. Other people have come to fill the void. Multiple people, all, much more equal, as it were, are able to all step up without there being one person. I used to have people come to me and say oh, do you want to run this event in this place? And I'm like, no, I'd love to play in your event though. Don't you want to run it? So I think that as soon as I stepped away from the community, it did allow other people to grow and to take the initiative. But there was a painful period. The UK really did slump, and I think that it's still trying to regrow out of that. And I was just really saddened that I wasn't able to step back and become a player and to enjoy playing the game, and that it seemed that I'd captured myself. The D&D analogy is that I never got to play the game. I could only ever be the GM, right? It happens so often that people get caught in that role, even though that's not the role that they wanted. They just filled that role because they knew that somebody has to do that.
Yes.
Otherwise it can't exist. an event doesn't happen by magic. Somebody has to put in a lot of work, and big events especially, they don't happen by magic. They happen with really, really significant work from people like Chris Eustace, right? Like, and he wanted to step away from the game, and I wanted to step away from the game, or at least I knew that I wasn't going to do it without Chris, because of all the work he does. And so that's actually what led to me stopping at the time. And as soon as I wasn't pushing my own local community to play the game as well, we just fell back into our natural routine of a new game every few months. Like I say, it was a unique time that I was committed entirely to Song. Our general state of play is we play a game for a couple of months and then get bored and moved on to a new game.
Okay.
And that's where I'm back in this lost ocean of looking for a great game. I know that Song is there, but we have played that game to death. And so I think there are some people in my club actually who are the ones that I can't get to play the game. I couldn't bring them back. They've had enough. They want to move on to new games. They're excited by other things. And it's only a small club. So if everybody's not playing the same game, then we don't have enough people to play.
Exactly. I mean, that's totally the problem that everyone has in their communities. I hear a lot from US, where communities are like, they have like a lot of amount of like players, and absolute number is tremendous, right? But small communities in each and every city, and like, because it's so not as connected as smaller countries as ours are, right? It's not as common to go to a big event or like drive whatever in US like 8 hours to another event. So so I totally can relate to that. I mean, there I will jump back to some or to one question that popped up. It's a nitty-gritty question. I still wanna read it out. When we collected the questions, one big aspect that we got from the community was, what about the Brotherhood? So the Brotherhood, I know you got that already. You still want to have it on stream today. So what's everything about the Brotherhood? Will it be in stats? Will it be available in the invitational, etc.?
Yes.
Yes.
I am fully committed. Like, I understand that I put out the announcement a week ago, start of July. People suddenly, flurry of like people responding really, really fast. I was crazily surprised at how quickly everybody wanted to start work on a new site, do a new thing, whatever. I am committed to running the site just as I ever have been for the past 2 years, as you hopefully now are aware, that like I have continued to do minimal maintenance. I commit to at least that minimal maintenance. In that minimal maintenance time, I of course added the Boltons, which were a bit of a problem. The Brotherhood without banners also have some problems, which means that they're not super easy to implement because they keep adding new special builder rules. Short answer is yes. One of these big problems, one of these big technological issues that like Stats 1.0 has, and I wanted to break away from in Stats 2.0, is that I committed a few years ago to aligning the builder incredibly closely with War Council. This is the only reason why they're not on yet, is that because I effectively can't do all the steps in the process.
Because it's not in War Council.
Because it's not on War Council. And there is information in War Council, which, I mean, yes, the cards are available. Everybody has them, but like there are all sorts of images and stuff like that. So getting technical, lots of people in the community be aware that a few years ago, War Council stopped including cards as images anymore. What they did was they included all the individual assets that builds a card. So the app now builds its own card, which means that you can update it very easily. You can, you don't have to update the actual image. All you got to do is update the entry,
just text,
which builds the card. Problem is that I associated lots of things with the way that card is built into the site. It was a bad choice. It's a choice I regret, because from then on, it was incredibly hard for me to put something onto the site, put something onto the builder until it was in War Council. I made that choice because at the time they were very active. for a brief period of time, they were really good at putting new units onto the war council. And I thought, hey, this is a new direction that they're going in. They're going to be way quicker and more active users and keeping war council relevant and up to date. Brotherhood has been a very special, problematic case because they have been available, as far as I'm aware, since like November, at least in some cases. Pre-release, people saw the units even before that. But I believe their official release date is this week, the 17th, the 19th?
17th, yeah.
17th,
yeah.
So you can expect that shortly after they're launched on War Council on the 17th, they will then come onto the site. I'm not, it's not that on January the 1st, I no longer am keeping the site up to date. You'll still get monthly statistics. The site will still run. I'll still keep an eye on all the tournaments, people who have problems with their sign up, all these maintenance things, which have been an issue for the past couple of years. I'm committed to the next 3 months.
Cool.
I absolutely want in 3 months' time, when the invitational occurs, I want the site to be at its peak. Weirdly enough, I actually built some new things for the invitational to be able to do, which I was only able to do because I'd given up on the 2.0. I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to have to put it in 1.0 because I was intending to put them in 2.0, but that's not going to happen now. I mean, the invitational will use a different tournament structure to anything that you've seen on the site before. But unfortunately, that will go away straight away because I will build it in time for the event that I want to run, and then it will it'll be gone. It'll be gone a few days later.
It'll be gone. Okay.
I mean, in the future of the site, etc., like I intend to stop supporting the site as soon as I've had this last wonderful. I cannot say how pleased I am with how the invitational has gone. It's not that I'm disappointed with the invitational. It's that it's the perfect end for myself in the community. Say goodbye to everybody. It's wonderful, the support that it's got. But it has been this very clear message that no matter how amazing an event this is, CMON don't seem to want that. Like, they don't want to align with that. They don't want to be involved in that. They don't want to be involved in any discussions about how that can continue into the future. I wanted to discuss with them how this could, be the start of a whole series of invitational events that moved country to country, or ran biannually or something like that. But like I say, instead it will have to just be, that's the best I could possibly give. That is everything I've ever worked for. It's this meritocracy of recognizing communities from all around the world, small, large. It recognizes every game that you've ever played, and it tries to bring all of these people together. And I think that it's gone amazingly well. And I couldn't do better than that ever again. That is the best thing I've ever done for Song. I'm so pleased with it. And if you're not interested in the best thing I've ever done for Song, then you'll never be interested in anything that I can do for this game, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're all excited to be there with you, and like for those who are interested, we will have another video coming up also with Carlo, but then exclusively on the invitational. So keep an eye out for that. Another question that was in the in the question from the community we collected beforehand was around tactics. Maybe we can just tackle this one really quickly. Is there interest in you on tactics? Will you try it? Could that potentially fuel a little bit more love for Song midterm? I don't know.
Again, the timing on tactics is important because I know that it's officially supposed to be delivering in February or something like that. Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's supposed to be before the invitational, but I think in reality, everybody understands that Kickstarters are very, very.
It might be later. Yeah.
In some ways, I had aligned the invitational that I really hoped that it would be, again, a place to showcase what tactics can be to the Song community, because I think that the crossover will be huge. it is important because if tactics could either be here to replace song, or it could be here to revive song, or it could just bring in new people and they can, you know, integrate seamlessly.
Integrate, yeah.
Again, I am completely blind to the intentions and the inner workings. I am aware that somebody in the future will have to make big decisions around whether or not something that replaces stats supports both. One, either. Does it support them as two separate games? Are they you know, are they integrated?
Or just the things you can integrate, right? Because I think we are aware. I read the rules, and and we saw some spoilers for units that you can integrate into song as like commanders. We saw Robert Baratheon, so it might be just the things you can integrate and just leave everything else on the side. I don't know. Yeah, totally with you.
So on the horizon, there are really big decisions to be made around support for tactics, right? Like, and its future implementation into the game. Unfortunately, again, I'm not privy to what, like, I am unable to plan for these things because I'm, you know, I have no idea what the vision is. And therefore what you end up with is you know, tactics is launched one day. Along with everybody else in the community, is taken by surprise by it. Hey, one day it's there, the next day, you know, it's not there, and then the next day, hey, it's launched. It's got its own war council or something like that, right? Like, and the pressure from the community is that I mean, and I want to deliver to the community. I want to deliver it incredibly quickly, and you get something really hacked together and thrown together as quickly as possible. So, so am I interested in tactics? Yes, I'm interested in tactics as a separate game. One of the things I like the most about Song, I know it has alternate timeline, which begins from the death of Robert Baratheon.
I've heard that a lot, yeah.
Yeah, but that it was a concise timeline, and that you don't. I'm not super big on like things that let you play, you know, like Magic the Gathering that lets you play X-Men versus elves versus, you know, versus Darth Vader, right? Like, I'm not super into things that integrate timelines and integrate different story arcs. I like that Song is quite concise, so I wasn't super looking forward to the idea that you might have you know, House of the Dragon era kind of characters integrated into Song era characters, integrated into like Dunk and Egg, you know, timeline characters.
I feel you.
Right? So I would say that actually, you know, it played a role in the fact that I think that it's time to move on, because I think that the game is about to go through a lot of turmoil, which could be positive, could be negative, but you need somebody who is either like so into the game that as soon as things happen, they're aware of them, or you need somebody who is being pre-warned of these changes at the helm. That's who you need leading the community, and I'm neither of those things anymore. I've never been pre-warned of things that are coming, and I used to be able to cope with it because I knew everything as soon as it was, you know what I mean? Like, everybody always wanted to tell me everything about that, what was happening. Everybody, such a rumor mill in Song. Everybody wanted to tell me these rumors that they'd seen, or something was coming down the line, giving me warnings. Oh, by the way, there's probably going to be an update next week. 90% of them are false, but like at least now and again, you know what's going to happen. And I was aware that, you know, like a big seasonal update was going to come, and that I would have to do like an all-nighter to get the builder
to get it done.
Done as soon as possible. You know, still got a day job, unfortunately. You know, still got other things to do. So yeah, tactics will be super interesting. It'll be super. It's potential to revive
Exactly.
some of the lapsed players for Song is very high. I actually think that Song myself could really do with a 2.0 just to bring back lapsed players. When I think about my own community and my own groups in the local area, lots of them, you know, like would probably come back for a 2.0, but I struggle to convince them to keep playing the game as it is. And so, you know, like tactics could function as it, or it could be the death knell and everybody might move to tactics. But then, you know, like I'm definitely not in the kind of position and passion and place where, like, if the community like was moving to tactics, like I wouldn't be there with tactics stats, right? Like I wouldn't like that's not where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that much and just, you know, just my personal opinion is I was in contact a little bit with some play testers for tactics. Then I saw the release of the rules book, and then I saw all the stuff that was happening on the Kickstarter. What is it? The site. I can't remember the name of the site, but like everything what was shared during the Kickstarter phase. And I think just for myself, I think it's close enough to have Bobby B riding against Catelyn Stark, right? It's out there for me. It's still close enough. It's not like Darth Vader kicking Iron Man's butt, right? It's so I just saying, for me, it's close enough. Personally, I think when I'm reading the rule book, I think and again, just my forecast is that it will really fuel Song, because you will start to take these options and put it in there. Have a new commander for your Baratheon army, for example. We just talked about it. And on the other hand, tactics, the rules for tactics are so different to Song, because it's played so differently, especially due to the fact that you have this let's say resource system in which you have to gather coins to pay for certain actions. Exactly. So you have the aspect of let's say resource economy, which you do not really have in Song. I mean, there is the aspect of how much or how fast do I go through my deck. And you have tokens on NCUs and stuff like that. That's a kind of resource management, but not as in tactics. So the resource management is really deep in tactics. So with the copper coins, the silver coins, the gold coins. So when you want to have like Gregor Clegane doing something big, you need to pay big, right? You have to pay him a lot of money to destroy Peter Baelish in one blow. So so for me the system is so different that, and probably I'm biased, or probably I'm just hoping to be positive, but I'm really sure that it will be positive for both games and that they can coexist. But you know, that's it.
I think that they are definitely distinct from each other. I guess the only fear is that is that tactics is marketed heavily, right? Like to the same crowd, right? Like you'd think that there'd be a lot of crossover, particularly with the crossover. And again, come back to like people's time is limited. If it is heavily marketed to the Song community, and it turns out to be a phenomenally good game, you know, like or just some people really, really prefer it. The Song community risks losing players to tactics. The big unknown, and I hope that it goes the right way. The big hope is that tactics brings in lots of new players, and then those players come
to both, and they cross over. But don't you see the potential for tactics is way closer to traditional skirmishers we've seen in the past. So let's say mythic battles, Pantheon, for example, or all the crossovers. What else? I mean, we have. I have my wall of board games, as you do probably too, from the Kickstarter. So or heavy hitters, all that.
Easily function as that gateway game, right? Like that's what they always talk about, you know, as it were, like Kill Team as is to 40k,
exactly,
or even like Space Hulk is to 40k, where what you have is something that's incredibly board game-esque, incredibly small skirmish. You can convince someone who's never played a full-scale war game, hey, just try this. You just buy it, it's fully contained, it does its thing. and then they start to play it, and then you're like, hey, but you know, like there's more
Yeah,
out there.
there's more. Yeah,
you could have the full experience.
Yes.
And yeah, like it could be a wonderful boon. It could be, it could be, we could be sat on the precipice of you know, like Song really starting to fulfill what I thought that it's capable of. You know, I still think that Song is capable of being bigger than Age of Sigmar, right? Like I think it should be the de facto like fantasy setting game. I think that it should be the second. You know, you'd be. It's mental to think that it would ever be bigger than Warhammer 40,000, but like, you know, the sci-fi crowd just like has you from such an early, and it might be mental to think that it could be bigger than Games Workshop kind of produced games anyway, because Games Workshop like have such loyalty from such a young age from a lot of players, but in its core fundamentals, what I saw in Song all those years ago is that this is one of the best possible tabletop experiences that you can have, and that it translates to events incredibly well. And when we ran the London Grand Tournament, Song at the London Grand Tournament, of course, the London Grand Tournament is a multi-game system, by far focused on 40k, as it is, of course, the biggest game in the world. When we ran it in 2002, when we had 110 players there, it was the third biggest system at the tournament. There are 20 plus game systems there, but it was Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, A Song of Ice and Fire. It was the most successful thing. It was bigger than all of the Asmodee games combined. It was bigger than Star Wars Legion, combined with Star Wars Armada at the time, combined with bunch all those games up together, bigger than Conquest, Last Argument of Kings, bigger than you know, bigger than Warmaster, and bigger than Middle Earth Battle, you know. And so it really showcased that like this game had legs if you want to focus, if you give your support to the community for that side. But unfortunately, I think that, like as I said, that's not the direction that CMON want to go with the game. And so I still think that it has that potential. I still think that if they had a 2.0 and they revived the game with that as their outlook, that they would actually really support event-based driven gaming and focused in on that side of the game, then I think that you could have the most wonderful community going. But yeah, I think that the competition there is crazy. You have to have every aspect, and the game alone is only one of many factors that you need to have in place to compete for people's time. The greatest game doesn't succeed unless there are people championing that game and being supported, and you know, and a growing community and a global community, and people see activity and people see events, and the game is going strength to strength. You need to ride the wave as well. Momentum in the gaming community is so important. You know, I think that's really obvious with how crazy the momentum behind Trench Crusade has been. You know, and who knows whether or not they'll carry that through for Trench Crusade to have like a really long-lasting, established, you know, legacy, or whether or not it'll be a flash in the pan and people will have forgotten about Trench Crusade in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, 2 years' time. Maybe nobody will care anymore. Hype is so important, and CMON are incredibly good at building hype. They have done better than others, converting that into a long-term game.
Absolutely.
But I still think there was untapped potential there. It was a difficult time. All the hype around this game was COVID, like pre-COVID. It was just rising.
Yeah. It's a really peculiar situation for launching a game, having it developed. Yeah, it's totally, Yeah. So Carlo, we're at the 2 hours mark.
We are.
We are. I mean, not saying we cut it off straight away. So chat, please, if you have like any crucial questions left, if you have anything right here, you want to discuss live with Carlo, then this is your chance right now. The mods will take a look at your questions. I will take the time to read out a few feelings from the community. We have Bartender, our good, Sebastian from around the corner here in Germany, co-developer of the TTS. Here to bid farewell to stats, still in disbelief and denial. I think I can relate. So we have Paperboy Jay, which is a really influential character in the German community, also because he's building up such a great community in the western southern part of Germany, doing so great things, and we collaborate really close with him. So he's saying big shout out to Carlo. You've done a great job and commitment to stats. Thanks, and my deepest respect for you. And then we have from your side of the ocean, Yecats. Sad to see stats go. It's been a very valuable asset I've enjoyed. Been integral to helping rebuild the UK scene. So, and this is just a few examples. These are really representative of the sentiment in the entire community, I can tell you, because a lot of people are reaching out to me. A lot of people are reaching out to all the other Hits and Crits team members. So I can really double down on this one. So now we have Chris Tran from the US. Thank you both for hosting this chat. Carlo, thank you all for your hard work. And we have Chris Baker. So 2 NCUs is better than 3 then. So I have seen this, Chris. And this was one of the first comments in this, and actually good that you repeat it, because I would have forgotten, but I really love, and maybe we can close with this one. So Carlo, is 3 better than 2 in song?
I think so. It's interesting. I believe that is the first thing that, I would like to say, was conclusively proved. it was when before stats existed, whether you run 3 NCUs or 2 NCUs was the hot topic. It was the thing that the community argued over. So yes. Of course, the first thing I did as we got the first however many games in was I looked at, like, what are the win rates of running 3? What are the win rates of running 2? And it was wild how much running 3 was better than running 2. I was also always a huge proponent of running 3. I've always said I've never beaten around the bush. 3 is the superior way to go. It is the gentleman's version of Song. What makes Song special is the NCU board. So why would you want to run less than 3? What's super interesting is all these years later, whether it be because the game just moved forward, or whether it be because of discussions driven forward by stats, and it's well known that whether or not they ever officially acknowledged the existence of the site and talked about it, it's well known that both playtesters for the game and the developers themselves utilize stats. They are on it. They have accounts. They look at the statistics. They look at the discussions that we've had over the years. What's most interesting about the current game state is, I think, that for the first time ever since when they implemented the pass system, more activations isn't better, for the first time ever. And I think that was the most revolutionary step forward in balance. And so
absolutely,
for the first time ever, I'm willing to admit that right now, 2 NCUs is not worse than 3 NCUs. But for the entirety of the history of this game, that has not been true.
Okay.
It was 3. It was 3, and I will fight anybody who said otherwise. But right now, I actually think you can be incredibly successful with 2. It's not even a problem. You can run 6 activations right now and do really well.
Yeah. And we've seen that happening in big tournaments also. Yeah,
exactly. But that wasn't the case for such a long period of time. When the TTS scene was really kicking off, middle of the COVID, it was 11 activations or nothing. Like 11 activations or go home was where we were at. So yeah, it was crazy times.
Crazy. So so you heard it from the man. 2 is now competitive with 3 NCUs in the game. So yeah, feel free to try it out. So Carlo, thanks again. I think I made it clear how thankful we all are for your work and your passion and this. And we are not thankful for COVID, but we were thankful for this. You know, these three things come together: time, your passion, and all you did, like for stats. And we can all like settle down on this is really a site which will be deeply missed, which will still be discussed after this live stream, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So you know, feel free to reach out to us, to Carlo, if you have any further questions. We're always open to discuss any questions you might have. And with that, I want to end. Carlo, is there anything that you want to share with the community as you're like before we sign off?
Just, you know, thank you for everybody who tuned in today, sent nice messages. Thank you for everybody who sent me personal messages. I received, you know, a good 200 or so personal messages sent to me saying that stats meant really a lot to them. You know, that like it was super valuable to them. And so that was really important, and it's made the decision, you know, so much harder to leave. I think that sometimes you forget on the day-to-day like how valuable the site can be to other people. Thank you to everybody and every content creator who, you know, also works inside the game. Like I think that there are wonderful stewards of the game right now who will help take it forward. I think that you know, if the community does come together and build a new thing, a fresh start isn't the end of the world. I think that, you know, a new perspective that tries to achieve what stats does and more, because you know, as I always say, like it only scratched the surface of what I wanted it to achieve. And if somebody comes at it now with new passion and renewed vigor, and if they manage to align with Simon on that's what the future of the game is, I think there is crazy potential there. But I really last thing want to say thank you to all the site patrons. I mean, their financial contribution is important to having kept the site alive for the past 2 years. As my own interest waned, they, you know, kind of convinced me that like it was worth even trying to start at 2.0. And that they stuck it out while I did that in fits and starts. But way more than their financial contribution is that like it was the only concrete measurement I had that people shared this vision that I have for the game, that they shared where I thought the game could be and wanted to take the game to, and that they were, you know, willing to be a part of that and contribute to that. And so, yeah, I really thank them with the bottom of my heart. I think that I never really managed to give back to them what they deserve to be given. You know, I think if there had been more Patreons, then the site might have lived on for longer. But I don't think that it's the community who, you know, should have to pay for the tool. It shouldn't require them to convince me that it's the right thing.
Yep.
So, you know, all I can say is I'm really sorry that 2.0 you never got to see it, that it won't be completed. You know, if people after this really open, honest discussion about the barriers to continuing stats, people want to still message me and have these real conversations about what realistically can be done, then I am open to those conversations. But I don't believe that people are. I may be surprised. I may be genuinely mistaken about how much people want the site to exist. But other than that, you know, I would really love to put this behind us and get back to focusing on the Invitational in 3 months' time. Yep. Hopefully that the announcement is early enough that people can reconcile with it, come to terms with putting in a plan for what happens next. Be really happy about that, and we can make the Invitational just the biggest, best event that there's ever been for this game, because that's really what I think it's going to be.
Awesome. So yeah, as mentioned, we will have another video with Carlo on focusing on the Invitational and on the content creators supporting it, and everything we're gonna see there soon. So yeah, thanks again. With this, I'm closing. And Carlo, I know you're rolling those crits like each and every day. We do too, and you guys do too. See you next time.
Come for the hits and stay for the crits.